At Christmas, Aunt joked, "You're still the dramatic one." While my hands shook pouring juice instead of wine, I watched the carton tilt too far, dark red juice sloshing against the rim of the glass, and yanked it upright just before it overflowed. A couple drops splattered onto the tablecloth, blooming little stains near the reindeer pattern. My fingers were slick on the cardboard, cold from the fridge and damp from my palm. Behind me, the house was doing its usual Christmas thing. Kids shrieking, chairs scraping, the TV in the lounge blaring some carol playlist no one was really listening to. Aunt's laugh floated over it all. That sharp, tinkly sound she does when she's pretending something's harmless. It was my first sober Christmas in this house. First one where I wasn't topping up my wine glass just to be social, until my edges blurred enough that I could sit through the day without wanting to crawl out of my skin. 8 months without a drink. 8 months since the night in April when I scared myself enough to go to a meeting instead of another bar. I'd been rehearsing for this day like an exam, what I'd say when offered champagne, where I'd sit at the table, the breathing exercises my therapist taught me. I'd planned everything except how it would feel to have my own aunt, half a meter away, casually pin the old, dramatic label back onto my chest like it had been waiting in the cutlery drawer with the Christmas napkin rings. She said it because I just told her I wasn't drinking this year. I said it lightly, like it wasn't a big deal. "I'm off alcohol for a while," I'd shrugged, reaching for the juice instead. She'd raised an eyebrow, glanced at my mom, and then that line came out of her mouth on autopilot. "You're still the dramatic one." Like choosing soda over Sauvignon was some attention-seeking performance. Mom didn't correct her. She just did that tight little smile she does, the one that says, "We don't talk about things directly in this family." "You know you can have one glass," Mom said, like she was offering me a favor. "It's Christmas. No one's going to drag you to rehab." My throat went dry. Rehab. That word had never actually been on the table. I'd white-knuckled sobriety in my one-bedroom flat with lukewarm tea and late-night meetings in church halls that smelled like dust and coffee. But sure, make a joke. Make it sound like I'm playing a part. "I'm good with juice," I said, even though my heartbeat had picked up at the smell of the wine she was pouring for herself. It was a cheap red, same brand Dad always buys, the scent hitting my nose with a weird mix of nostalgia and nausea. I focused on the juice. It was Ribena, the concentrate kind, too sweet and sticky. The purple label was peeling at one corner. My hand trembled again when I put it back down on the table, so I shoved it into my pocket. Aunt leaned in, perfume cloud of powder and lilies. "Your cousin did Dry July once," she said. "She didn't make a whole thing of it." I didn't answer because the two options in my head were smile and joke back and hate myself for the rest of the day, or tell the truth and ruin Christmas. Those have always felt like my only choices in this family. I grew up being the dramatic one. I don't even remember the first time someone said it. It's just always been there, like the floral wallpaper in the hallway or the squeaky step on the stairs. I cried too easily. I got stomach aches before school. I complained when Dad yelled, when Mum sulked, when doors slammed hard enough to make the frames rattle. I flinched at loud noises. I asked too many questions. I wrote long entries in a sparkly diary that my brother once read out loud to my cousins like a stand-up routine. "Dear Diary, I think I have anxiety but nobody listens to me," he'd mocked, and everyone had laughed. So dramatic, Aunt had said then, too. Alcohol started smoothing the edges when I was about 17. At first, it was exactly what everyone else treated it as, fun. Sneaking vodka into orange juice at house parties, giggling in bathrooms, losing count of drinks and waking up with my eyeliner smudged and my tongue like sandpaper. But somewhere between normal teenage experimentation and my mid-20s, drinking became this social lubricant for my own family. Family lunch turning tense because Dad's political opinions were louder than anyone else's? Top up your glass, Jess. Mum doing that thing where she goes quiet and brittle, making everyone guess what's wrong? Have another. Aunt telling the same story about how you always used to throw tantrums at the shops, while everyone looks at you like it's adorable? Laugh, sip, swallow it down. I still remember the first Christmas I got properly drunk. I was 19, home from first year of uni, all jagged from trying to be a new person but going straight back into an old role. I'd broken up with my boyfriend a week before and was pretending I was fine about it. Dad kept topping up my glass with a big grin. "It's Christmas." And Mum kept saying, "Oh, let her. She's heartbroken." Like that excused it. At some point, I stood up to get more gravy and the room tilted. I knocked my chair, bumped the table, and red wine sloshed all over the white cloth. Everyone laughed. "You've had enough," Dad chuckled. "Lightweight." I laughed too, because what else do you do? I woke up the next morning with my head pounding and this fuzzy, embarrassed sense that I'd made a spectacle of myself. Nobody mentioned it again. It was just Jess's tipsy Christmas, filed under silly family stories. Fast forward 7 years, and that silly story had turned into regular blackouts, bruises I couldn't explain, waking up with my phone full of texts I didn't remember sending. There's one particular night I keep replaying. Sitting on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m., back against the cupboard door, crying into a half-empty bottle because Mum had called me earlier and said, "You know your aunt thinks you drink just to get attention." I told myself I could stop any time. I just didn't want to. Until April, when I scared myself. I won't go into details because I don't really want to turn this into a self-harm post. But there was a night with way too much wine and a bottle of sleeping pills and a moment where I looked at my hand and realized I couldn't remember taking the last few. The next morning, head pounding, mouth dry, shame like a physical weight in my chest, I finally texted a number I'd screenshotted months before. AA meeting, 7 p.m., church hall on Green Street. I sat in a circle of plastic chairs that night, palms sweating, heart racing, listening to people say things I recognized in my bones. "I drank because I didn't know how to exist in my own family," one woman said. "I drank so I could be around them and feel nothing." My throat closed. "Do you have any boundaries with your family?" my therapist asked me later. "I don't even know what that actually looks like," I admitted. "We made a plan, short visits only. No staying the night. Have my own transport so I can leave. Text my sponsor before and after. And for big events, birthdays, weddings, Christmas, an exit strategy. You don't owe them explanations that put you in danger," she said. "You can say, 'I'm not drinking,' without justifying it," which is what I tried to do with my aunt 5 minutes ago, and she'd swatted it away like I'd said I was giving up gluten. Back in the dining room, I slid the glass of juice across the table to my younger cousin. Her little fingers wrapped around it, leaving sticky marks. She smiled up at me, gap in her front teeth, and my chest squeezed. She's 8, the same age I was when Aunt first started calling me the dramatic one in that indulgent, dismissive tone. "Thanks, Jess," she chirped, oblivious to the emotional hurricane in my head. "Anytime," I managed. The rest of the grown-ups were drifting in from the kitchen, carrying bowls of roast potatoes and peas. Dad came last, balancing the turkey platter like it was a sacred object. His cheeks were already a bit flushed. I could see the bottle of red on the sideboard, 3/4 empty. "Right," he said, dropping the plate down with a thud. "Let's get this show on the road." Aunt took her usual seat diagonally opposite me, next to Mum. Dad sat at the head. I was halfway down the table, squeezed between my cousin and my brother. My usual place, far enough away from Dad that I could pretend his jokes weren't directed at me. As we started passing plates, the polite small talk kicked in. Work, weather, traffic. Then, inevitably, the topic of my not drinking slid back into the center like a gravy boat. "So what brought this on then?" Aunt asked, waving her fork. "This health kick." I stabbed a piece of carrot too hard. "Just needed a break," I said. "She's being very good," Mum chimed in. "She's on her wellness journey." She said it like she was describing someone trying a new skincare routine. "Well, as long as you don't get preachy," Dad laughed. Nothing worse than an ex-smoker, ex-drinker, ex-fun person at the table. Everyone chuckled obligingly. I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck. My hand actually twitched toward my water glass, like my body couldn't decide whether to hydrate or throw it in someone's face. "This is exactly the kind of thing my therapist meant," a little voice in my head said, sounding maddeningly like my therapist. You are allowed to say, please stop. Another, much older voice, Mums, aunts, everyone's, said, don't ruin Christmas. You okay? My brother murmured under his breath, too low for anyone else to hear. I glanced at him. He had a beer in front of him, but his hand wasn't on it. His brow was furrowed in a way that made him look younger. There was a time when he'd have joined in the teasing. We both grew up marinating in it. But a few months ago, when I'd finally blurted out, I think I'm an alcoholic over the phone, he'd gone very quiet and then said, do you want me to come to a meeting with you? Fine, I whispered back. Just tired. Across the table, Aunt topped up her own wine. You have to admit, though, she said, eyes on me. You've always loved a bit of drama, Jess. Remember the time you pretended to faint in Woolworths because Mum wouldn't buy you a Barbie? Everyone laughed. Mum shook her head fondly. Oh God, yes, she said. You went down like a sack of potatoes in the cereal aisle. That wasn't pretending, I said before I could stop myself. The words came out sharper than I meant. The table quieted a fraction. What? Aunt said, smile faltering. I didn't pretend to faint, I said. My voice was steady, but my chest felt like it had been cracked open. I actually fainted. I had heat stroke. The doctor told you that. Mum's face did a strange thing. She frowned, then smoothed it away. Oh, darling, you were just being overdramatic, she said. You were fine. I put my fork down. Clicked too loud against the plate. I had a fever and you dragged us to the shops because Nana wanted visitors, I said. I told you I felt dizzy when we got out of the car. You said, we're not turning around now, don't start. I remember the floor. I remember waking up with a shop assistant fanning me. The room had gone properly quiet now. Even the kids seemed to sense something. My cousin stopped poking her peas and looked between us. Aunt chuckled nervously. See? Dramatic, she said, but her eyes weren't amused anymore. Do you actually realize, I said, heart hammering, that that's what dramatic has meant for me my whole life? Me saying I'm unwell or scared or uncomfortable and you telling me I'm being theatrical. Because that's not cute. That's you ignoring things. I could feel my brother tense beside me. Under the table, his knee bumped mine, like a warning or support. I couldn't tell. Oh, for God's sake, Jess, Dad muttered. Can we not do this today? There it was. The family get-out-of-jail-free card. Not today. As if there was another day scheduled for my feelings. I almost backed down. I could feel the words sorry, forget it rising automatically. It would have been so easy to swallow them, chase them with a glass of wine, and spend January hating myself in my therapist's office. But my hands were empty. No glass, just a knife, a fork, and the memory of that church hall with its bad coffee and the woman who had said, the first time I told the truth at a family gathering, I thought I was going to vomit. Then I went home sober for the first time in years. So instead of apologizing, I took a breath that felt like sandpaper going down and said, when you call me dramatic for not wanting to drink today, what I hear is you telling me again that I'm overreacting to things that are actually hurting me. Mum blinked rapidly. Her napkin twisted tighter in her hands. We're just joking, she said. This is how our family is. We tease. That's the problem, I said. Everything's a joke, even when it isn't. Aunt's face had gone a little pink. You know I didn't mean anything by it, she said. Honestly, you're so sensitive. I am sensitive, I said. Saying it out loud felt weirdly like coming out. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. No one spoke. I could feel every eye on me. Dad looked like he was chewing his tongue. Mum stared at her plate. The kids fidgeted. The gravy congealed in the jug. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. I texted my sponsor in the bathroom before lunch. Going in. Pray for me. And she'd replied, remember, you can always leave. I thought about that now, the door at the end of the hallway, my car parked out front, the fact that my life was bigger than this table. I pushed my chair back a little. The scrape made me wince. I'm going to get some air, I said. Mum looked up, panic flashing across her face. You're not leaving, are you? I don't know yet, I said as honestly as I could. I just know I'm not going to sit here and be called dramatic for not drinking when I'm literally in recovery. The word hung there like smoke. Recovery. Nobody had said it out loud in this house yet. In recovery from what? Dad asked as if he genuinely didn't know. Alcohol, I said. And this. I gestured vaguely at the table, at all of them, at myself. From pretending I'm fine when I'm not. I didn't wait for their responses. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos, the one of me in my graduation gown, the one of all of us at the beach when I was 16, squinting into the sun while Dad's arm rested heavy on my shoulder. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. In the front yard, the air was cool and damp. The sky was that washed-out summer gray that still feels like December even when it's hot. I sat on the low brick wall where I used to wait for my friends to pick me up, dug my phone out of my pocket and called my sponsor. She picked up on the second ring. "You out?" "Yeah," I said. My voice shook. I might have just told my whole family I'm in recovery and that they're part of the problem. She let out a soft whistle. "How's your breathing?" "Too noticeable," I said, half laughing, half crying. "I didn't drink, but I really, really want to." "Okay," she said. "That's honest. Can you stay on the line with me for a bit? You don't have to go back in." I glanced back at the house. Through the front window, I could see shapes moving. Someone standing, someone sitting down. I couldn't hear them. It was like watching a silent movie of my own life. "I don't want to blow up Christmas," I said, voice small. "Sweetheart," she said gently. "You not pretending anymore is not the same as blowing things up. They built that house. You're just refusing to hold up the ceiling by yourself." We talked for a few minutes. About my cravings, about the exit plan we'd made, about how proud she was that I'd said anything at all. Eventually my breathing evened out. The urge to drive straight to the nearest bottle shop eased from a scream to a sullen mutter. "You can leave now," she reminded me. "Or you can go back in for dessert and then leave. Either way, you've already done the big scary thing." "I kind of want trifle," I admitted, which made her laugh properly. "Go get your trifle then," she said. "Text me later." When I walked back in, the noise from the dining room had resumed, but softer. No one was yelling. They were eating. The tension was still there. The air felt heavier, but the world hadn't ended. I slid back into my seat. No one met my eyes for a moment. Then my brother bumped my elbow with his. "They kept your spot," he murmured. On my plate, someone had put a slice of turkey and a mountain of potatoes. My glass of juice was still there, half full, beads of condensation down the side. Mum cleared her throat. "We didn't realize it was that serious," she said, not quite looking at me. "The drinking." I speared a piece of turkey to give my hands something to do. "It is," I said. "It has been for a while." She nodded, eyes shiny. "Okay," she said. "Well, we'll try to be more mindful." About the jokes. That was it. No big apology, no tearful reckoning. Just that clumsy, half-formed acknowledgement. It wasn't enough to fix anything. It was more than I'd expected. Aunt took a sip of her wine, then set the glass down a little too carefully. "I didn't mean to minimize anything," she said stiffly. You know what I'm like." "Yeah," I said. "I do." I let the silence sit for a second. "But I also know what I'm like now. And I'm not going to drink just to make everyone else more comfortable." She stared at me, then gave a quick, jerky nod. "Fair enough," she said. Later, when the plates were cleared and the kids were tearing into presents, I stood by the kitchen sink rinsing dishes. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I could hear Dad in the lounge telling some story to my uncle, his voice loud and animated. Every so often, a wave of irritation rolled through me, followed by a smaller wave of something like grief. "Hey," my brother said, appearing at my side with a stack of plates. "That was intense." "Yeah," I said. "Sorry." "Don't be," he said quickly. "Honestly, Someone needed to say it. He hesitated. I, uh, didn't realize it had gotten that bad with the drinking. I hid it, I said. From you. From them. From myself, mostly. He snorted. Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're on the juice. He nodded at my glass by the tap. Even if they're being weird about it. Thanks, I said. We washed dishes for a while in companionable semi-silence. Soap bubbles popped between my fingers. Outside, someone set off a firework too early and the kids squealed. At one point, Aunt came in to grab more napkins. She hovered by the doorway. Do you need a hand? She asked. I think we've got it, my brother said. She didn't leave, though. Jess, she said, fiddling with the edge of a napkin. I do joke a lot. It's how I deal with things. But I don't want you to feel like you can't come here. Because of me. I turned off the tap. My hands dripped suds into the sink. I'll come if I can be myself, I said, which includes not drinking, and not being called dramatic when I'm telling the truth about how I feel. She swallowed. Right, she said. I'll work on that. I didn't tell her it wasn't my job to help her work on it. I didn't pat it away with it's fine. I just nodded. That night, back in my flat, I sat on my own couch with a mug of peppermint tea and stared at the little 2-inch plastic Christmas tree I'd bought from Kmart. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Thanks for coming today. Love you. Proud of you for, I read it 3 times, trying to decide if, was cowardice or an olive branch. Maybe both. I texted my sponsor. Home. Sober. No wine, 3 plates of potatoes, 1 emotional outburst. She replied with 3 clapping emojis and, you did great. 1 honest Christmas down. I don't know what next year will look like. I don't know if this family will ever see me as anything other than the dramatic one. I don't know if they'll read books about addiction or keep making awkward jokes. What I do know is that this year, when Aunt made that joke and my hands shook pouring juice instead of wine, I didn't reach for the bottle to prove her right. I let my hands shake. I told the truth. I went outside and called someone who believes my version of events. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't tidy. But it was real. And maybe, for someone who spent most of her life being told her feelings were theater, that's the quietest, most radical thing I could have done.